All yours.
Right, hi everybody. Don't know if you can see me. I am going to share my screen. There we go. Okay, so, right. Okay, I can still hear some noise in the background. Could everybody just check that they are on mute? I can still hear loads of sound. Okay, right. I'm going to be talking today about ploughing neglect and the protection of northern prehistory. So this is a real passion of mine. It's an area that I've been studying through my MA and PhD, and it's very close to my heart. So I hope that you enjoy it. So we have loads of wonderful prehistoric landscapes in northern England, particularly in northeast England, which is the focus of the talk tonight. On the left, you can see Thornborough henges. So there are 3 henges there. They're in a northwest-southeast alignment. They are absolutely massive, 220 to 240 meters across each of them. The top one is shrouded in trees. The middle one is very much extant, and the lower one is virtually now a crop mark. But it is very beautiful. That's a picture from Historic England's website. The picture on the top right is of Winnie Hill. It's in Northumberland. It is a mini 4-poster, and these are very beautiful. They're 4 low stones, generally in view of a tarn or a lake or a river, and they're probably Bronze Age, whereas the henges are definitely Neolithic. And then below that, you've got 2 different types of barrows. We have the barrows that obviously have been dug into in the 19th century. The middle picture is of Lilla Howe, which is in North Yorkshire. And the lower one is also North Yorkshire, but it's a pair of twin barrows just near Sutton Bank. Now, obviously, there are plenty of monuments that have survived. I've tried to use pictures of monuments that you probably wouldn't know, but I just wanted to explain to you that it's important to see these monuments in their landscape, and it's nice that they are still extant and that we can still enjoy them. So the left-hand side one is obviously just a Bronze Age barrow in Thirsk, but in a ploughed field, but it's been kept. The middle one is a partially surviving monument. It's a huge, it would have been originally a huge stone circle called Hethpool North. There is also a Hethpool South, but that's a bit more difficult to photograph because it is absolutely massive. In this beautiful field near Yevering Bell, just not far from Wooler in Northumberland, just to the west of it, you can go and visit this. Very easy to drive to. It's beautiful for a walk along the pathways around there, and it's a wonderful monument that you can really imagine and feel at the bottom of a very steep slope. And then the third monument that I'm showing you is one of the barrows surviving in Garraby Wold in East Yorkshire. There were originally 18 in a linear alignment. I think there's meant to be 6 now that are either definitely extant like this one or partially extant. Something we'll be coming and talking about in a few minutes. So we also have monuments that have been neglected. So we have those that survive and those that tend to be quite well looked after. And then we have these monuments that are just not being as cared for. So this one is a rock art panel at Castle Morpeth in Northumberland. It's called Middleton Bank Top 2A. It had, although I'm sure you can't count them now, 24 cut marks on it, a groove and a cup and ring mark. But as you can see in the foreground of the panel, and if I move into this section here, you can really see that that area is now being eroded because grouse feeders are placed on top of this flat rock outcrop. And there must be something within the feed that is actually eroding away the panel, which is really sad. Because as you can see, further away from that, the cups are quite a bit clearer and the rings are clearer. We've also got the wonder of Harland Moor Stone Circle, which is at Farndale in North Yorkshire. Now, there's 10 or 11 stones left, but you can't photograph them anymore because they are so deeply hidden in heather and bracken that you can barely see them. And I went up last year and they'd actually burned the land around the monument, although not actually the stone circle. And that destruction had almost reached the monument, which was quite terrifying. This stone circle, it only has 10 or 11 surviving stones. It's in a bit of an oval circle, in a bit of a D shape, because there was an ancient trackway which ran through the monument on the northeastern side. However, you know, the stones are quite large. Some of them are up to 2 meters across. They are all between 0.5 and a meter high, and they are scheduled. And to the south of the monument, there's a cairn field of at least 10 cairns, also included in the scheduling. And within those cairns, they haven't actually been excavated. They're 3 to 4 meters in circular form, about half a meter high. But when similar monuments in the nearby vicinity have been excavated, they've been found to contain human bones. So they are, although they are in a cairn field and they look like a clearance cairn, they are, to all intents and purposes, burial cairns. And then the third monument I want to take you to, which I think most of you should recognise, this is just a partial view of Castlereagh Stone Circle in Cumbria. Now, I've included this because this is a historic England picture rather than most of the others, which are mine. But this demonstrates that animals are allowed up at, even at Castlereagh, they are allowed in the fields at Castlereagh. And there's been medieval ploughing up to the monument, but in recent years, you know, these animals are allowed to roam around, and we just do not know what effect that's having on the subsurface deposits within and without the monument. So we've also got monuments that have been completely deleted from our view. This was hanging Grimstone Long Barrow. It was in front, just about where the yellower section of, just behind the yellower section of the corn, in front of the forest. And it was a Neolithic long barrow. It was excavated in 1868. At the time, it was about 15 meters wide and 24 meters long, and about 3 feet high. When it was visited in 1974, it had been seen to be ploughed down, and it had become more circular, about 30 meters in circular form and about half a meter high. As you can see, it is no longer there. It has completely vanished. This is in East Yorkshire. Now, when it was excavated by Mortimer, John Mortimer, who excavated 270 barrows in East Yorkshire in the 1850s to 1900, it was a really interesting monument. They barely found any bones, any human bone. Traces of there was a human leg bone and traces of another burial, but they felt as though when they dug into this long barrow, it had been a dwelling, a below ground dwelling with a flat roof, which had been burned by fire and had completely collapsed. And they found 20 pig jaws within this monument in different heaps, in 4 different heaps. They found roebuck and red deer antlers. They found lots of other pig bones, rabbit bones, pig's teeth. But unfortunately, no human bones. Now, whether there were never many human bones in this monument, whether they've been placed in this sort of structure and then removed and placed elsewhere, we just do not know. Now, in this field, there were 2 Neolithic round barrows, Garton Slack 80 and Garton Slack 81, both of them excavated by Mortimer, both of them full of masses of bones, at least 6 bodies in Garton Slack 80, and many human bones, but certainly about 8 bodies in Garton Slack 81. But the exciting thing about Garton Slack 81 was that there was an adult burial, which Mortimer thought was a woman, and part of the left foot was missing on this woman's, at the bottom of her leg. And and there was an extra complete articulated foot laid next to her. Now, we don't have the rest of the body that extra foot came from, but it just gives you an idea that these were exceptionally interesting barrows with huge amounts of body removal, displacement, huge amounts of decision making that the Neolithic builders had put into to these monuments. Now, when Mortimer excavated Garton Slack 80, it was 3 foot high and about 31 meters, so about 1 meter high and 31 meters in diameter. And Garton Slack 81 was 0.5 meter high and just over 25 meters in diameter. So they were really big extant monuments at the time. This one, there should be in Southside Mount here, which was these are all scheduled monuments, apart from Garton Slack 81, which I can't find anywhere on the scheduling. But this one, Southside Mount, it was excavated by William Greenwell, who you might know was an antiquarian who excavated widely in northern England and Derbyshire. And when he came to it, it was 30 meters in a circular form and 2.7 meters high. So that's 9 feet. It was extremely huge. And he found 10 children in the burial, numerous adults, at least 10 adults. He found flat chalk pieces which were set behind the adult burial, and there were flags over the adults' knees, stone flags. But the most remarkable part about this particular burial was that he found 79 Neolithic saws. So these are a type of flint tool which take a huge amount of time to create, because there is a tiny little cut marks nibbled off the one side of the flint in order to make something that looks like what we would see as a saw. Okay, so it's an extremely sharp monument, sharp tool. And obviously there were other things. There was a piece of greenstone axe, which is incredibly important. There were many other scrapers. There were leaf arrow points. It was a fabulous barrow. It is now flat. And finally, this poor monument, there were 5 barrows in this field, all scheduled. It's called Howe Field. And 2 of them are very slight, although to the naked eye it's difficult to see them now. But in 1973, 2 of them were 1.3 meters high, and one of them was slight earthwork. 2 of them had disappeared already. And there were masses of pottery, there were lots of bodies, bone pins, flint implements within these barrows. So what we need to ask ourselves is, why are these prehistoric structures being ploughed out and mutilated? Why are they not better protected? How can this have happened? Because these monuments are all scheduled, apart from that Garton Slack 81, which I tried to find when Passgate was still running, and I couldn't actually find it. When I put in the grid reference, it didn't seem to register it. But I found it on other maps. They were scheduled, they are scheduled. And for those in East Yorkshire, which we've just been looking at, these poor little ones, there were originally 1,127 Neolithic and Bronze Age barrows, whether they were long barrows, Neolithic long barrows, or Neolithic round barrows, or Bronze Age round barrows. And they were in a very small area in the Yorkshire Wolds, and a few just on the edge of southern North Yorkshire along the Gypsy Race. Now, in the 1970s, they were visited, and some of them again in the 1990s, and they were scheduled to protect them from harm. But unfortunately, that scheduling hasn't stopped them from being ploughed flat. So I just wanted to show you what has happened to them over time. Now, I must say that this particular blue dot, which is 15 meters high, on the left of the grid, is Duggleby Howe round barrow. And obviously that is very much extant. The other monuments, as you can see, as time goes on, I mean, the dark blue is very difficult to see and there aren't very many dots. There were a few that were visited before 1850, only a couple. Obviously, between 1850 and 1900, William Greenwell and John Mortimer were recording the barrows that they were visiting. And as you can see, all the orange dots belong to their height estimations. The grey dots are the monuments that were visited between 1900 and 1959 and their heights. The yellow dots are the monuments that were visited as part of the scheduling in the 1960s to 70s, because some of them were visited at the end of the 1960s, so I've just covered it as that batch of time. The blue, paler blue dots, of which there are far more, were visited in the 80s and 90s. And as you can see on the flat line, the green dots represent those monuments that have been visited in the modern era and have been checked. So this equates to one barrow, which we know was lost before 1850. By 1900, 20 barrows had vanished in the Yorkshire Wolds. By 1959, 56 had gone. And this is having been checked by Historic England or English Heritage before them. By the end of the 70s, there were 349 now missing. By the end of the 90s, there are 513 missing, and it's now acknowledged, or was on Pascape until it sort of collapsed and closed at the end of 2019, I think, or 2020. 727 barrows had vanished from the surface of the earth. Now, it's not to say that they are destroyed below ground, but they're certainly destroyed on the surface of the earth. And 15 of them are definitely extant, and that was mentioned within Pascape. But there's 406 barrows of the original 1127 where nobody seems to know whether they are, still extant or not. So, why is this happening? These monuments are scheduled, and scheduling was originally designed to acquire nationally important prehistoric monuments. Sorry. Sorry about that. Can't stop a phone from going. So we were I'm sorry about that. Right. Scheduling was originally designed to acquire nationally important prehistoric monuments and other monuments for protection by the state. They're meant to be closely managed. So if you want to do any work on the monuments, you need this thing called class consent. However, this class consent doesn't seem to apply to agricultural operations which were already in progress before the monument was scheduled. So if you had already been ploughing the monument, that was fine for you to continue to do so. But there are other things that you're not allowed to do. So the monument is protected, and from the following things. So if you hadn't already been ploughing the monument, then that would be not allowed if the monument over a scheduled monument. Okay. If you wanted to plough more deeply than you were currently ploughing, that also would not be allowed. If you wanted to strip the topsoil or do subsoiling or do commercial cutting or removal of turf, that's also not allowed. You're not allowed to do drainage works over the monument. You're not allowed to plant or uproot trees, hedges or shrubs. And you're not allowed to tip all your waste into the centre of the monument. Okay, so the monument, it is there to, the idea of scheduling is there to protect the monument. And the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Areas Act was developed to preserve these ancient monuments of national importance in the state, and this is a quote, in the state in which they have come down to us. But does scheduling work? Is this protection necessary? If you are allowed to plough a monument from 2.7 meters high in the mid 1800s to completely flat now, or from 1.2 meters in the 70s and 90s to completely gone from the earth now, what was the point of it being scheduled in the first place? Why were these monuments not protected? Why was there not a little sort of area around the monument designated for protection, and the farmer to just, as you saw on earlier pictures from first, the farmers just ploughed around the monument rather than over the monument? Surely it would be easier for the farmer. So what can be done? I mean, basically, the Scottish idea of adopting a monument seems to be an absolutely superb idea. For those lost barrows of East Yorkshire, there are 406 of them, of which we have no idea whether they are still upstanding monuments, extant, visible to the naked eye, or whether they too have succumbed to the plough. So I think the first thing that would be important to do would be to go and have volunteer groups go and check these monuments. Obviously, this needs to be run from a national forum. This needs to be done through Historic England or through local county councils or park authorities. And this needs to have money behind it. But this is something that's really critical. You know, we are, for whether we appreciate it or not, we have left the European Union. We are on our own. And we want to be able to preserve the monuments that we have in the state in which they've come down to us. So we want to keep them and stop them from getting any further harm. We want to be able to enjoy these monuments, especially when we're having to staycation all this year and probably next year, and for goodness knows how many years we're going to be at home. We want to be able to visit some of these monuments, monuments which are suitable for visiting, monuments which are safe to visit. Of course, it would be fantastic to be able to go around in our local area and go and see these monuments, which are so impressive. So, you know, firstly, we need volunteer groups to go and, for example, in East Yorkshire, go and see those monuments and check the heights and the diameters of the monuments and see how well and how upstanding they are. Perhaps in County Durham, it may be another plan, because I know that the rock art of County Durham hasn't been visited since 2008, when the England's Rock Art Group did their final visit to the monuments, or they did a project from 2005 to 2008. So it would be fantastic to think that those monuments might be visited in County Durham, and so on. All throughout the whole of England, I'm sure there would be certain types of monuments which would merit a visit and a check. And obviously, in order to do this, we need to have better relations with the farmers, with the tenant farmers, with the landowners. They need to be consulted, and they need to be brought on board wherever possible to help us to preserve what we've already got. I mean, ploughing over these structures, whether they are upstanding, extant or not, really needs to cease, because even below ground, some of these, well, the majority of the burials within the barrows that John Mortimer and William Greenwell excavated, they had scooped hollows, they had actual grave pits, and most of those, or many of those, were dug through the natural as it was in those days, which would have been slightly lower than today, and it was, they were sort of dug deep into those. So there's a very good chance that some of the below ground structures within these barrows have been protected. And so long as we can stop what's happening now, it would be fantastic to think that we'd be able to excavate those and save or check or look at whatever is still there. Animals in the fields with monuments, that could easily be avoided. In Scotland, this is just a random example, but I have seen the same in Wales, I have seen it in Gloucestershire, I have seen it over in Northern Ireland, in the whole of Scotland, this is the case. And there are rock art panels in Northern England, in Northumberland, which have been protected in this way. As you can see, there's kind of just a a metal fence surrounding the monument. Sometimes it's in black, sometimes it's in green. It's well away from the monument, but it kind of just encompasses the space of the monument and any structures which might be within it. It keeps the animals out, and it obviously helps to protect the monument, and also makes it an easily visitable monument, because as you see, this panel was obviously donated by UCL, but you can see that they wanted people to become citizen scientists, monitor the rock art, make sure the rock art's not getting further eroded. So they are putting in these piecemeal supports to try and keep monuments safe. And I just think that should be, you know, widened to the whole of Britain. You know, we need to, our local groups could adopt monuments and could periodically, once a year, twice a year, go and check the monument, make sure it's safe, make sure it hasn't changed, make sure that there isn't too much vegetation, because that's the other situation. There are plants such as thistles, brambles, as you saw, the bracken and heather, which are very, very invasive and below ground invasive to those monuments. We don't know what we're destroying around Harland Moorstone Circle. There's another stone circle I just went to see at the weekend. It's called Gunnerkeld. It's in Cumbria. It's a wonderful monument, and the farmer's absolutely fantastic, but there are huge thistles just naturally growing in among the monument. And obviously, if the farmer were to be given the support and help, that could be removed. Groups could go and support them and help them to manage that. I mean, the farmers are busy. These are within their fields, but they have masses to do. So this would be something that volunteer groups could get involved in. And I think, you know, in order for all of this to occur, we need a huge awareness campaign so that the public can understand these issues and can support archaeologists, notify them of changes, and we can have a huge network of support around Britain. And it wouldn't necessarily need to be only for prehistoric monuments, but it's those are the monuments that I am visiting, and those are the monuments that I feel there are no signboards at them, there's no mention of them, people walk over them, not round them, because they don't even realise that they are important. And to be honest, before I started doing archaeology, I had no idea either. So yeah, thank you very much. I know it's a bit of a chat with you. I hope you've got plenty of questions for me, and it'll be nice to hear what you've got to say. Okay, I shall stop sharing. David can come in.
Thank you very much, Emma. I think Emma made a really important case there. But one of the challenges we hear a lot about.
You're a bit quiet, David, by the way.
Microphone. Okay, yes, thank you very much, Emma the professional. Thank you very much, Emma. I think Emma made a really important contribution there. One of the challenges we face today in preserving heritage and looking after heritage, it's not always the threats to spectacular monuments like the impact of the roadworks around Stonehenge. Actually, it's far more mundane but ongoing activity, whether it's just cattle trampling it, sites being continually ploughed. It's often this less kind of large-scale cumulative impact that actually threatens the huge archaeological resource we have in Britain, and we're kind of struggling, I think, often to find ways in which we can deal with this slow but steady erosion of our archaeological resource. I think Emma brought out some really interesting questions there. If anyone has any questions, if you can put them into chat, I will lob them gently at Emma. I'll put her on the spot. So please feel free to put any questions or queries. We've got one question already. Is there any push to get legislation changed to better protect these sites? This is a question from Karen.
No, but I've been on quite a few courses about how to do that, and it is part of the longer, you know, the wider plan. But it's just at the moment I'm trying to do a bit of an awareness campaign so that people start to understand what's going on. Because obviously, if you want to get support in the sort of lobbying kind of level of support, enough to get actual acts changed in Parliament, you need there to already be a lot of people who are ready to support you. So it's just from the moment, I think it's about me getting all of this information out there, trying to get people to understand just how amazing all these sites and monuments are in the landscape. This is just Northeast England I've done. I could have easily done this for any other part of the world. It's absolutely fantastic. And yes, okay, so I can see Polly, thank you very much. Yeah, the ladies in Derbyshire, yeah, exactly. This is exactly the point. You know, the first slide that I showed you of the Thornborough henges, quarrying has nearly got to the sides of those henges. I mean, it is within 100 meters, and they are hugely important and massively fabulous. And yet, yeah, quarrying takes precedent and is more important than protection. And this is the issue that we're dealing with. So yeah, for me at the minute, it's an awareness campaign, trying to do it, trying to get everybody to understand it, trying to widen knowledge, and then I'd be able to, yeah, lobby my MP, start doing something a little bit more serious. But yes, it's on the plan. Thank you.
Got a question from Bob. Does Historic England ever check the farmer hasn't increased the depth of his ploughing?
No, I don't know. You see, I don't honestly know that that ever happens. When the Priddy circles were damaged, one of the 4 Priddy circles was damaged in Somerset. It was just somebody who happened to be on Google Earth, who happened to notice that the section of the monument was just disappearing day by day, and it was noted by just somebody in, you know, happening to be on Google Earth. So no, I don't think that Historic England have the time or the resources. I think their money has been so cut, and I just don't think there's any particular care for these monuments. I mean, as I say, I go around and I talk to farmers and I try to engage them, and I do my bit. But yeah, it would be brilliant to have this much more widely done and lots of local groups joining in with it.
And this is one of the challenges, isn't it? There's about 20,000 scheduled monuments in England alone, and obviously relative quantities in Scotland and Wales. And it's how you actually monitor it. No matter what systems you have in place, it's how you're actually able to enforce and monitor. I think this is where the idea of kind of more adopt a monument schemes, more devolving the keeping an eye onto the general public more widely, I think it's a really useful approach.
Yeah, I do. And the thing is, it's rambler groups, walker groups, cycling groups. All of those groups are passing these monuments on a daily basis. They are the ones who are seeing these monuments. People who are walking now, who never walked much before in their local area and would always drive somewhere else, were forced through lockdown to walk around their local area. And they've started to notice these monuments and they've started to appreciate them. And I think this is where we take a wonderful, you know, I've discovered an amazing hill fort that I never knew that was built by King John. It's called Castle Levington, and it's just outside Yarm, and it's where I live, and it's just so near. And I'd never visited it, and it is spectacular. And I've been there about 5 times now. So yeah, just as I'm wandering, I'm now visiting monuments, and I'm sure that loads of groups could be doing this sort of thing, just as part of their daily, monthly, yearly cycle.
I suspect over lockdown, a lot of people have discovered quite a lot of their local monuments. Got a question from Natalie. Are the landowners and farmers in support of this? What's their attitude?
Well, all the landowners and farmers I talk to are fully in support, but sometimes they need more than I can quickly provide. They want to know how they should remove the bracken and the heather from around the monument. Well, I don't know. I'm not a preservation expert. I'm not a conservationist. So that's what I mean. We need to start getting actual support from Historic England, from councils, from conservation departments to explain, do we just cut it off at the base or do we try and uproot it? Is it better to try and remove it completely or just maintain it? And it's the same with the thistles that grow at masses of different monuments. Yeah, it's trying to do this safely. And I've said to each of them when I've spoken to them, if that sort of issues come up, I've said, you know, I'll come back to you as soon as I've got an answer. So it's just about starting to just get this awareness out, starting to find out what we can do and get some really good ideas about how that could be managed safely without damaging the monuments further.
Thanks. I've got a question from Anthony. Hi, Anthony. A really interesting talk. I wonder what level you think the problems are best addressed at. Are things too high level currently, and might public understanding and interest be better engaged at local or parish level rather than national, regional or country?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think you do need some legislation that allows this to happen. But once the legislation is in place, and if there is some funding that can be, you know, maybe through the Heritage Lottery Fund or some other fund, if there is some way of getting a bit of funding in order to be able to support these different ventures, then yeah, I think that's an excellent idea, Anthony. Being able to do this on a more local level would be brilliant.
Right, we've got time for perhaps just one more question. If anyone's got anything else they'd like to ask. You've already put Emma through her paces there.
That's fine.
Well, okay. I'll just talk for a moment. I just want to remind people that we've got a series of other talks coming up. I think our next talk is on Thursday from Professor Becca Gowland from the Department of Archaeology, talking about the impact of industrialisation on child health, drawing on the work she's been doing on human remains from cemeteries excavated in the north of England. Fascinating stuff there. And then next week we have talks on what do we have talks on? We've got a talk on Whitby Jet. I'm really looking forward to that one in particular. And I think let me just scroll down. I think, yes, Sarah. I think Sarah, who's giving a talk, is here tonight. So Sarah, you've seen the standard you have to aim for.
Not very high, don't worry, Sarah. We'll be fine.
And our last talk is next Wednesday from Richard Annis, who is part of Archaeological Services Durham University. We are one of the few departments of archaeology who also have a commercial archaeological contracting arm, and Archaeological Services have done everything from fieldwork in Nepal to support staff to fieldwork actually on our own campus in advance of university building things. So that's something to look forward to. I've also popped a link to the survey I'd like you all to try and fill. I know it's really boring, but if you just spend 5 minutes doing that, it really helps us feed back to the Lottery Fund, who've put lots of money in some of the work we're doing, and I think that'd be really appreciated. So otherwise, I want to thank all you mad people for staying in to watch Emma on an exceptionally hot evening. I'm down in York at the moment. It's absolutely sweltering, and I'm sure it must be just the same further up the country. So look after yourselves. Hopefully I'll see lots of you in a couple of weeks. Thank you in a couple of days. Thank you very much, Emma. I should also say, if you go to our YouTube channel, you will find Emma talking about one of her favourite sites, and I'll just put a link to that in the chat as well. As part of the project, we've had a group of people, staff and students, doing little 3-minute video postcards from their favourite sites. So if you search for the Belief from the Northeast YouTube channel, you can find Emma and others.
It's very cringe-worthy and cheesy, so you have a laugh at least. It's not.
So yeah, so you can, if you want to have a laugh at Emma.
Video by my son, so yeah. Very funny.
So thank you very much, everybody, and hopefully I'll see you all soon. I'm just about to give a countdown. So if anybody's got a last minute for questions, otherwise 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Cheers, Emma.